Good evening. It's 5:05 p.m. Don't adjust your radio.
What?
You're not supposed to be sleeping right now. No, you did not miss a whole night of sleep. It's Rob Kirkpatrick and Bernadette Lee for the special event, Changing the Charter for and Against. We are joined by Kevin Blanchard with the group Fix the Charter, here to talk about his hopes, what's in this revision to the charter. We're going to be voting on it December 8th coming up. So we decided it was the perfect time to get people together to have this conversation. Also, apparently the new KPEL star who should be on the payroll now, Mr. Andy Hebert, Lafayette resident.
Wait, what is this?
Yeah. Thanks for coming in as well.
Sure.
We like to do something a little bit different here on KPEL. We have the platform to have long discussions and to welcome your calls directly into the people who are talking. There's no intermediary. I might jump out for here, in between and talk to you guys on the phone so I can line up names and everything like that. But we really wanted to do this, and I appreciate both of you guys for coming in tonight. It's great. So, Kevin, let's start with you. Kind of give us the 30,000-foot view of what you call fixing the charter. What are the benefits, questions you still have, problems you hope will be fixed, and then we'll go over to Mr. Hebert.
Okay, so I guess I'll talk about three things.
Or you can introduce yourself, too, and say why you are such an expert in a lot of this kind of stuff.
I don't know an expert, although I will say I really like that I'm here with Andy. I was a former newspaper reporter. I covered city parish government since about 1999, so about 7 years in. And this might be, Andy and I might be the two people in Lafayette who have spent the most time at council meetings.
Right? Okay.
Now, Andy was talking, I was writing, but we were both there and paying attention. So this is very interesting to me, and I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate that we get to do this. I see this basically like three things. One, let's just step back, like you said, 30,000 feet. How has consolidation worked, right? I think that was a conversation that started years and years ago, and I think it's good and healthy to have that conversation today because, look, if you're a parish voter, right, and we're all parish voters here, but if you're a parish voter, the parish is still broke. We still have flooding problems. We still have traffic, right? And we've had some of our parish councilmen who have said, because of the system of government where they are in charge of both parish and city issues, that they spend 80% of their time thinking about the city of Lafayette. Well, okay, but I think if I'm a parish resident, I would like somebody that's spending 100% of their time thinking about parish issues, right? Our drainage issues that we have in the parish, our roads, right? So from the parish perspective, that's one thing. Now, I also, like Andy, I'm a city of Lafayette resident as well, and I pay city of Lafayette taxes, right? And so from the city's perspective, how has this worked out, right? Well, we've gotten to a point now where we're falling in comparison to the population as the rest of the parish, where everybody else in the parish is growing. That's great. So we're at a point where in the next census or the next, we might have actually a minority on the city parish council, but we're paying these taxes too, right? Every year, the city is pitching in a little bit more to keep consolidation going. Every year, City of Lafayette taxpayers are funding a little bit higher share of the shared costs of consolidation, public works, parks and rec, the Cajun Dome, all that stuff, right? So how is that working for us, right? I don't know that it is. And so what we're doing is one simple fix. It's not a big fix. And Andy's going to be able to, and he will, and I hope he does, point out a lot of things that we're not fixing, right? But what we're trying to fix is who do we hold accountable and how, right? Because at the end of the day, the folks in the parish, all of us, deserve a parish council that we can hold accountable for these things like roads and drainage that aren't getting the attention that they need, right? And in the city, I need to be able to know that if someone is making a decision on how to spend city tax dollars, or, quite frankly, if someone's making a decision to put a tax on the ballot for the city, that they live in the city, that they're paying the same tax that I'm paying. And right now, we've got a system where people in the city of Lafayette aren't able to hold other people accountable. We got 4 people on our council, 4 of those districts that are not City of Lafayette districts. And so they do their job every day. We've asked them to do it. We've set the system up. They're not bad people, but they're still making decisions about City of Lafayette tax dollars. And if they do something good or they do something bad, I, as a city of Lafayette resident and voter, cannot hold them accountable. And so that's the big issue, right? That's what we're trying to fix.
All right. Mr. Hebert, Andy Hebert here with us. You are a resident of Lafayette as well known to people who go to council meetings. Give us your thought on how this is not fixing. It's not to fix or not to fix. It's to fix, or is it a fix? You know, right. I mean, that's kind of how we're looking at it at this point. So go ahead and give your perspective.
Well, from what I've read, and what I did is I took the charter amendments that were proposed and I actually implemented it to figure out how it would actually work to fix what is going on. And there was two key words that really struck me, and they were jointly, and both. And this is where if you have two separate councils, both councils are going to have to act together to solve the financial problems. And that's when you're going to get, I believe, a lot of infighting on who controls whose money. For the last 22 years, the city of Lafayette's district's representation has been gerrymandered to allow this type of representation that's occurring. In fact, the document that Kevin and them produced said that 60% of the city of Lafayette, of the parish, was inside the city of Lafayette at the day of consolidation. Now, had they put equal city representation in every district, that means 60% of the 9 districts would have been controlled by the city of Lafayette population living as parish residents. But that would mean the parish would not have as much influence. So they gerrymandered their districts, is what they did. Basically, they put 100%, now it's 100% in one district and 7% in the other district. That's pure gerrymandering. If they want to fix it, what they should have done is just go ahead and put equal representation in every district now. That would have been a very simple fix to solving the problem of equal representation across the board. We voted to merge the two into one. The elected officials, they talk about, they say the parish council members. And I'm going, no, they're not parish council members. They are city parish council members. It is their responsibility as a parish council member, all of them, to solve the parish's problems. Now, they don't want to do it, or they can't do it. I don't know what their problem is, but they're elected parish-wide, and they should have attacked those parish problems. Why aren't they doing it? Who knows?
So, Kevin, one of the comments that has come up time and time again has been that this doesn't fix everything. Why take the step now?
Sure. So, two parts of that. One, it doesn't fix everything, right? I think that the way that I think about this, as far as why do this now, is we need to take incremental steps. Think about it. In 2011, we had a vote to deconsolidate. Right, we had called the Charter Commission. We had asked a bunch of really good, dedicated people who came in and spent a lot of time, and we were like, how can we make this thing better, right? And at the end of the day, I think that if I had to fault that group, they got a little bit frustrated and they couldn't get to kind of a solution. Again, they were looking for a big solution at that point, and so they said, well, let's deconsolidate. Which is effectively like go back to the old charter. This thing isn't working, right? And people voted that down, and I think, in retrospect, it makes sense because I think people were like, well, we just skipped to the divorce. Like, where's the part where we do counseling, right? How do we make this work, And literally that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to set up a system where we keep the consolidated services and the savings that should be able to provide and the efficiency. We're a small parish. We shouldn't have to have 2 public works departments. That's crazy, right? But on the joint and both, like Andy talked about, when it's a city issue or it's a city tax dollar, like think city police, right? The city council votes on that. That's a city council issue. That's what they handle. The parish council doesn't need to be a part of that. Same thing on the parish side. If we're talking about any of the parish millages for roads and drainage and everything else, that's a parish issue. The parish council is going to make that decision. They're going to decide how that money's spent. But those joint things that Andy's referencing, that's when we're talking about our consolidated services. Yeah, and Andy's right. There is going to have to be a joint agreement between the city council and the parish council to say, okay, how are we going to make these decisions together now? Who's paying whose share? The problem with our system now is we're making those decisions already. I mean, no joke. Our city parish council makes all of those joint and both decisions all together. The problem is as a city representative, I can say, okay, I got all my votes lined up except one guy. I got 4 out of the 5 city districts, and we want to do it this way. I lose one vote. Parish guys say, this is how we want to do it, and it flips, or vice versa, right? I think those are decisions that as a taxpayer, I would appreciate that a body that's actually elected and paying the taxes that I'm paying, they make those decisions, right? When you think about it, we're kind of, we like to say that we're not a parish, we're a family, right? And I think a lot of folks are saying, why, are we doing this? It seems like we're just throwing in the towel. This is how we make it work as a family. These are the terms under which people in the city of Lafayette and the terms under which the parish of Lafayette make it work for all of us. So, it's not a big fix. It's still going to be plenty of issues. We're still going to have a lot of work to do. But we got to work on it because we talked about it in 2011. We brought it to the council in 2013. Lord knows Andy and has talked about the problems with consolidation and how those things have happened for even longer than that. So we're just trying to do a small fix as we go.
All right, Kevin Blanchard and Andy Hebert joining us in studio talking about the issues referenced as far as what the changes would be and if people vote yes or no December 8th and some of the questions that have come up. So that was one of the big questions that a lot of people have asked, the wording of joint and together. So if this measure were to pass and you have a city council and you have a parish council, but then there are issues that have to be decided together. For some people, that makes them wonder, why not just stick with what we have? Because if you're you would have to make the joint, like some of those issues, you still have to make a joint decision.
Sure, yeah.
So
it's kind of like, think about the House. It's like the House and the Senate, right? The House comes up with a budget. The Senate has to approve that budget, right? Have a similar thing. You still have, and this is one of the arguments in favor of keeping a single mayor president who has veto authority over those actions, is you still have someone who can say, okay, guys, you need to sit down, you need to work out whatever issue you might have, because eventually we're going to pass a budget here, right? And he has the ability to come in and make those either, those vetoes or whatever else to make that work. But, we could not agree as a city parish council today. Like, that's always a possibility. There's nobody that ever says, like, that you can get 5 votes to pass a budget any year, whether that's a joint decision of a city parish council or a joint decision of a city council and a parish council separately. You do it because who wants to be the guy that didn't pass the budget that year? Right. So there are a lot of things where it's like, yeah, that's going to be different. That's going to be a different set of discussions that we're going to have, and it's going to look different from the way it acts now. But the main thing is those city tax dollars aren't being spent by folks who don't pay the taxes. And so they're making those decisions. They should be the ones who have the say, right?
So following up on that too, curious about the 5-member idea for 5 members of a city council and 5 for a parish council. I remember the days of the 5 Lafayette city council members. I remember having a variety of different interviews with those folks. When there was a lot of discussion going on about this, do you know why the process was to discuss the number 5 and having 5 maybe versus 7? Just kind of curious about that side of it.
So I think there's a couple of things at play. One is, some of the talk and some of the feedback that some of the councilmen got when they went out and did talk to people about this was, don't grow government, right? And so we have 9 council people now. If you go to 5 and 5, you're adding 1 council person. If you only add 1 council person, you don't need to add any additional staff to be able to handle service calls. You don't need to have a new office. You don't need to put a new chair over in the, you can handle all those things the way you go. And so that was probably a main driver to that decision is, let's not grow government. You go to 7 and 7, all of a sudden you're adding 5 elected officials. Those are 5 more races that you got to go out and vote on, and 5 more districts that you have to service, which means you're going to need more people to take those service calls, do everything else. And so all of a sudden you're not paying for 5 new part-time people. You're paying for 2 or 3 or 4 more full-time people to handle that. Same time, like the number 5, like there's nothing really like crazy about that. I mean, the Youngsville City Council has 5 members. The Karen Crow City Council has 5 members. The Dusson City Council has 5 members.
But let's argue, too, that they have a smaller population.
But they have 5 people. I mean, if the
well,
thing
and
is
I understand.
like,
I'm just curious as to, I remember, like I said, I remember reporting when it was 5 members for the city council. But those towns also have a smaller population.
They have a smaller population, but I think the general concern that people have when they bring up the 5 people is like, well, that's 3 to 2. You have 2 people.
Sure.
Well, whether you're representing 50,000 people or 150,000 people, if that's a problem, if it's the whole, well, the 5 vote thing is a problem because you just need 3 votes to get things passed, I don't know, and I haven't heard, and I don't live in Youngsville, but I haven't heard that people in Youngsville have a problem with their 5 city council people set up, or that the people in Karen Crow or Scott have that problem too, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's always an act of how do you get a document to the voters that's going to get the votes necessary to get through the council.
Sure. We've had a lot of questions about that. Andy, do you have a perspective on that? As far as, should it have been 5 members? Should it have been maybe 7? Should it have been like the way it used to be? Because Kevin, help me remember here. I am getting a little old. It was 9 parish members at one time. The police jury, right?
Yes, the police jury.
Yeah. It was 9 at that time. Mm-hmm. So, any thoughts on that?
Well, when you look at the districts and the number of population they represent.
Okay.
If I want to call my council member and there's 40,000 other people that want to call that council member, are you going to get? How far are you going to be down the list of? Can I return his call? And that's one of the things in the 5 members of the city, which they could have set up inside the city corporate limits right now. They could have set up 5 city districts under the present charter.
So that capabilities,
sure, they can do that. They can draw 5 city districts inside the corporate limits of the city of Lafayette and put the other 4 outside the city, which means everybody would have. When you vote on city issues, those 5 would just vote on it. When you vote on parish issues, they would join with the 4 from outside the parish.
Right, which it
sounds
we're all
like
parish residents. Right, when it's 5 and 5. Okay,
right.
All right.
So you have 100% representation of the city of Lafayette with the 5 inside the city. And you have the parish, you have equal amount of population for them, too. So you end up with equal representation on the parish side, you end up with equal representation on the city side. What I find bothers me is that in the parish 5 council districts, they have put the city of Lafayette, the only consolidated city. Now listen to that. The only city is the only consolidated city in this government under consolidation in 2 separate districts. And I don't think that's fair in that, why? Because 3 outvotes 2 all the time.
Okay, thoughts real quick?
Sure.
Kevin?
I mean, I think that's actually a good point that Andy makes because, and I think that the rationale there is, if I'm a city taxpayer and I'm like, hey, I'm paying city taxes, I've got this dual system, I want, that's how we get this conflict, right? Well, give me my votes because I want to protect my money. But if we have a parish council that's not spending City of Lafayette money, right? It's only spending parish money, those municipal lines shouldn't matter. They're spending parish money for parish purposes. It's a lot less likely there's going to be some fight because those parish purposes are where they are. We know where the flooding is. We know the traffic problem is. Whether it's in Scott or Lafayette or whatever else, those are decisions we can make as a parish.
And as the mayor of the city of Lafayette and the parish, as in the drainage tax that just passed, the mayor of Youngsville went to that parish president and asked him to spend some of that parish money in his city. Now, as a city resident, parish taxpayer, who am I going to get to negotiate with the parish president to get that money in my city that I'm paying? Now, more than 60% of the parish taxes come out the city of Lafayette. More than 54% of the population of the parish lives in the city of Lafayette. Under the 5 council district rule, 40% of us will be represented.
Okay, interesting. We are going to continue this discussion. We do have to pause for just a couple of minutes. And if you're just joining us, we have with us in studio Kevin Blanchard and Andy Hebert, and we're talking about the issue that will be voted upon by Lafayette citizens coming up on Saturday, December the 8th. Fix the Charter folks being represented by Mr. Blanchard. questioning and some of the opposition to it being represented by Andy Hebert. In this hour, we're not going to be taking telephone calls, but definitely jot it down, put it in your phone, 232-1542. If you have the KPEL app, you can call us right from there. We'll be taking those calls starting at the top of the hour at 6.
And Mr. Hebert brought up the mayor situation and the mayor question, so we'll start the next segment with that. You're listening to special coverage here on Newstalk 96.5 KPEL.
It is 5:29, and Rob and I are in studio. I'm Bernadette Lee, Rob Kirkpatrick, in studio tonight talking about issues concerning Fix the Charter. Do people agree? Do they disagree? Questions that they have. Now, coming up in the 6 o'clock hour, we, of course, will take your telephone calls. But until then, we are discussing these issues with Kevin Blanchard, who is with the group Fix the Charter, and Andy Hebert, who has presented multiple questions, in particular, about representation and 5 council members and a mayor, et cetera. Before we get back into the discussion, I want to thank you gentlemen once again. Rob and I very much appreciate this. And for those who obviously cannot see us, what I think is so great about our system and you two gentlemen is the fact that Rob and I were talking about some technical things during the break, and you and Andy and Kevin are just having a great conversation, talking about the issues, talking back and forth.
This is America, man.
And I think that's so good for people to realize that this is local and we can have these conversations.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, first of all, Andy and I have had conversations about consolidation
for years.
20 years, But I mean, but the other thing, and this is what I try to tell people, that I think we just lose track of this sometimes with the way that politics works. This is Lafayette. We're going to see each other in the grocery store.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So, like, we can disagree. I disagree with
That's right.
plenty of people, including people in my family, but we still got to live together.
And
still
I love
family.
that you get that, because that's what I've always explained to people. The criticisms for years have always been, on one side, I'm too easy when I interview people, and on the other side, I'm too mean and too hard. And that was always my response too. Yeah. We live in this town, and when did we ever think that we would stop being courteous to one another? This is Lafayette.
I was about to say Lafayette. But you also have to admit, it's never the same side that thinks you're easy to the same side.
Oh, yeah. No,
so that's when you know you're doing a good job, Bert.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about the mayor-president situation, and we'll start with you, Kevin, because that has been the one thing I feel like the last, I don't know if it's the last frontier with consolidation, would be the difference of having a mayor of Lafayette and then a parish president separately. The current plan retains the mayor-president role, and a lot of people bring up issues like the court, like the parking garage that we have downtown, like some other issues as well. So where does that puzzle piece fit in, and why stop short of that in this plan?
Okay, couple of reasons, and that's a good question. It's something that that honestly, like, even folks who are supporting us and who are pushing for this thing are always like, why aren't we doing that too? I think that, like I said earlier, one of the things that we're trying to accomplish here is to make consolidation work, right? And so, what does that mean, really, right? Well, at the heart of consolidation is the shared services. It's the fact that we don't have 2 public works departments, or 2 parks and rec departments, or 2 planning and zoning departments, or 2 IT departments, or 2 administrations, or finance. We're trying to say, okay, we can do this all with one group of people. But in an executive branch function, I think you really need an executive, right? And so I don't know that it is an entirely a workable solution to say, okay, we got one public works department, and they're going to be making decisions about, what roads getting fixed tomorrow, right? And I got the parish president saying, I need you to go out and fix the road to Dusson, and I got the mayor saying, I need you to go out and work on Congress Street, right? What's the public works director supposed to do at that point if we're going to have shared services, right? Who does he say yes to? Who does he say no to? And so I get it, but I think, again, what we're trying to do is let's make consolidation work. And to do that, it needs to work. We need to be able to have that one executive. It's the buck stops here mentality, But I know Andy has some thoughts on that. And I just, the bottom line is, we're not trying to do too much at once. And, I think that once you get to the point where you're talking about a separate executive, Andy's got his list that shows, like, here are all the changes in the charter. You want to talk about some pretty hefty revisions when you start breaking up the executive functions.
So, Andy, is that something you could work towards?
Well, that's one of the issues, and that's where I always ask, how do you count the votes? This is a parish-wide election. We're going to change the constitution of the city of Lafayette by people in the parish. Does the city of Lafayette voters get a separate vote to decide whether they want to do this charter amendment or not? No, they don't. Have they ever had an opportunity as separate registered voters of the city of Lafayette made a decision on any of this? They've never given that opportunity. And this won't give them that opportunity because, like Kevin and I discussed on the break, was that all the amendments they make now, if we want to change those, we have to go back to the voters and amend the charter again.
Which goes back to your
issue of how I got to ask the parish council to allow me to amend the charter so that I, as a city resident, can have a mayor, but I got to get the entire parish to vote for it. Now, why should they have the rights to vote for my mayor, whether or not I should have one?
I want to agree with Andy on something. We have to have a parish-wide vote to say whether or not the city of Lafayette can have its own council. The current charter requires that. I don't particularly like that, but that is what the charter requires. I think that when it comes down to it, Andy and I are very much in agreement that if you are, like Andy does this all the time, and I love it. He's a city of Lafayette taxpayer. He's a parish of Lafayette taxpayer, right? Give me my 3 minutes for the city. Give me my 3 minutes for the parish, right? And so the amendment that we did make, and again, this is a compromise document that you're trying to get through a council. The amendment that we did make to the charter that if this passes will become effective is I think of the charter as a contract between the city of Lafayette and the parish of Lafayette. And so while the city does not have a sort of an opt-out mechanism in this revised charter, what it does say is that if this passes, the charter cannot be changed unless the city of Lafayette agrees to it, and then the parish as a whole agrees to it, right? I don't want to give up a vote where I only get to vote as a parish resident and not a city resident. I also don't want to give up a vote and say, well, I'll get a vote as a city resident, but everybody else outside of the city gets, like, I'm in the parish too, right? So yeah, I effectively, as a city of Lafayette person in that decision, I should have 2 votes, right? I should have, on the charter, I should have 2 votes when it comes to my tax dollars, a vote to elect a parish representative and a vote to elect a city representative. It's not revolutionary. It's really the way that 99.9% of the governments in America work, right? So, but that's what we're trying to get to. But I 100% with Andy, the fact that the city of Lafayette needs, quote unquote, permission from everybody else to get here is a little bit frustrating for me.
I want to talk about LUS coming up and what this makes, any changes and what the implications are for the LPUA. We're going to take a quick break, joined by Kevin Blanchard, representing the group Fix the Charter, and Lafayette resident Andy Hebert, who has done all the research for everyone, I guess, over all this time. We're going to continue this conversation next on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. All right, 541. There was a pretty public debate over the future of our utility system. That was eventually laid to rest, we think, for now. But folks have some questions if this charter amendment is made, if it's approved when voters go to the polls on December 8th. What does it mean for the LPUA?
Yeah, what does it mean for groups? Like, would LPUA continue in its current form? Would it disappear? What do you think in your reading of it, Mr. Blanchard?
So, yes, the LPUA goes away. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is the LPUA was created because of consolidation to try to find a way that even though we had a parish council, that we would still have mostly city people in charge of what is a city-owned asset, right? And so prior to consolidation, the quote-unquote LPUA of the day, the governing authority of LUS was the city council.
Right.
And so that's what this charter amendment does. It just says the city council is the governing authority. Right now, I don't know that a lot of people understand this, but there are about 9,000 to 10,000 people who are LUS customers who live inside the city limits of Lafayette. So they are owners of LUS, but they're represented as part of one of the bigger parish districts, right? So Jay Castile, for example, about 10% of his district are city residents and LUS customers. Jay Castile does not have a seat on the LPUA. So right now, there are about 10,000 people that if they're like, I don't like what someone did with my utility bill, I'm going to go out and vote because someone raised my utility bill, and they look at their ballot and they're like, oh, I don't get to vote for that guy, right? And so what this does is lines it all up, right? Mm-hmm. The city controls LUS, period.
Now, if you came to some sort of discussion in that would be, everything would be up to those 5 council members, correct? I mean, basically, because it goes back to the way it was before.
Everything, yeah.
So, I mean, what I'm saying is, let me just cut to the chase and say what I'm trying to say. Sure. So if Barnhart comes back and says, hey, let's look at this management deal again, then it's up to those 5 people on the council to decide.
If this passes, then it would be up to those 5 people on the council to decide whether or not to go to a vote for a management contract.
Right.
Right now, there's a loophole in the charter. The loophole says you cannot sell or lease LUS without a vote of the city of Lafayette, right? A vote of the people. It doesn't say anything about a management contract. And so this charter amendment puts language in the charter that says the sale or lease or anything that looks like a management contract has to go to a vote of the people. So yes, those 5 city councilmen would still be the people who would have to put it on the ballot, but it would still have to go onto a ballot. Whereas now, and I think this did get reported, there was the possibility that that deal may have gone through without a vote. Now, I know that the mayor-president and some other folks have said, well, that wasn't really the intent. Regardless, and I got to be clear, we don't, as a PAC, have a position on whether or not that's a good idea, okay? And I'm not here to say we should or shouldn't, What I am here to say very strongly, because I believe it in my gut, and is that nobody should be making a decision about LUS who is not a City of Lafayette resident. Nobody should be making a decision to sell it, to lease it, to have a management contract, to raise a rate, to hire somebody, to fire somebody, to dig a ditch, whatever, unless they're an owner of LUS, right? If we as the City of Lafayette do or do not want to do it, great. But that needs to be a city decision.
Okay, Andy, any thoughts on that?
If you go back to the original consolidation, 60% of the population equally distributed amongst the non-council members. That means all council members would have been on the LPUA board. Because of the gerrymandering of those districts and the continued gerrymandering of those districts, you have this situation that occurred. Now, I asked last night the question, and you can ask this too of you council members, if a management contract comes up, does the LPUA council have to approve that contract? I believe so. So the citizens of the city of Lafayette who own it have 5 representatives. They can hold their feet to the fire and go to the LPUA meeting and say, not going to happen. And I think there's enough citizens out there that are now objected to that will go to that LPUA meeting, especially if they held it, after 5 o'clock. They will show up and tell that LPUA board, we don't want any contracts. Now, what they need to do is put equal City of Lafayette residents in every district. If you get 60%, then they're an LPUA parish-wide. The problem with that is you can't get 60%. So instead of amending the charter and putting in majority population in equal districts in each council and have them as a sub-city, a sub-council of the parish, or let's just say, let's vote for a public service commission for the City of Lafayette, elected only by the City of Lafayette. Solves that problem. You don't have to amend the charter with these dual councils anymore. All you have is a separate council over there because you still got dual functions. Consolidated government's going to have dual systems all the way. Who's going to pay for what part of this meal? Well, I don't have any money to pay for it, like the family said. Well, I ain't got any money to pay for it. You got money to pay for it. Well, let you pay for a little bit more of it this time. Who's going to negotiate all that? Well, the city parish president. Well, it's going to be fun to see how he negotiates with himself with the 2 separate councils. And again, that is the problem you have. We voted to merge the city of Lafayette with the parish of Lafayette. I don't understand why these elected officials don't understand that. The city of Lafayette is totally surrounded, 99% or 90, maybe 90%, by non-consolidated cities. There's no way for the city of Lafayette to grow. There's no way for us to annex more land. So what they did is they set up 2 planning commissions. I was always wondering why they did that. Well, let's have a parish planning commission. Well, good. The parish planning commission is going to plan for the unincorporated areas and the small towns, not consolidated. The city planning commission will plan for them. Well, that planning commission will probably set up some areas of influence for those unincorporated areas, which include all the cities that are not consolidated, and the city of Lafayette will have a smaller area of influence to grow. Well, you're still stuck. Let's play it even further. Let's say all of the parish is incorporated. Who's the governing authority of the city of Lafayette? Lafayette Consolidated Government, elected by the parish.
I want to ask about that, Kevin, because it has come up earlier. I haven't heard it in the last couple of weeks, but when this first deal started happening, said, what about the option of taking all the unincorporated area, dividing it up so there's no unincorporated Lafayette Parish? So instead, you just have what looks like a garlic, clove with all these little pieces that all make one. What that being a solution. Is that a solution from what you know?
That makes me hungry. I'm realizing that.
Yes. We can do dinner after.
A lot of what Andy just said and that are all things that could be a solution possibly, right? I haven't looked at those as much. I think just before I answer that, because I just want one point, just to be clear, right now today, a management contract could be approved by the city parish council without voter approval. If this passes, it has to go to a vote of the people. And so there might have been another way to skin that cat, right? And maybe there should or shouldn't be, but your vote in December has a consequence. On the incorporated and unincorporated area, this is how I think about that. People choose to live in large part because they want to be where they want to be, right? And I kind of live in the middle of the city of Lafayette. I like it there. I have, I can walk to the grocery store. I can do a lot of stuff that's fun, right? I got neighbors. They're all close to me. The zoning commission, I'm hoping that they protect my property value and hold everybody's feet to the fire to follow the rules, yada, yada, right? I live out in the unincorporated area in Dusson. I've moved there for a set of different decisions, right? I like the open space. I like to have a bigger property. I don't necessarily want for everybody to be telling me what to do with my property. I want my own planning commission so that I can have those types of decisions made by people who are like me, right? But we also do so knowing what the potential tax burden is. I know that as a City of Lafayette resident, I'm paying the parish tax and I'm paying my own City of Lafayette taxes. And I get services for those, right? So I'm fine with that. But if we incorporate the rest of the parish, there's 33% of the people out there who live in the unincorporated part of the parish and they only pay the parish property tax in any special district that might come around, kind of like these fire things that are on the ballot in December as well, right? You incorporate those folks, their taxes are going to go up. They're going to pay those city taxes of the city who incorporated them. And so I agree that there could be a solution that might be found if we did that, but that's a political decision as well. And I looked at the results of the election in November and in the last few elections. I don't think that people are in the mood to have their taxes raised. And so I think there's a certain symmetry to everything. Like, okay, well, let's go ahead and consolidate everything. But that comes with literally a cost, right? Mm-hmm. The other problem is the way that we fund things, and Andy knows this, we're a primarily sales tax-driven government. Every government in Louisiana is, right? Well, that unincorporated area doesn't have very many income-producing properties. That's mostly neighborhoods, right? So when a city goes out and annexes, they want to annex a commercial property because that's going to be paying into the coffers. If you go out and require all the cities to annex the rest of the neighborhoods in Lafayette, so they'll have that corresponding obligation to go provide services to all those folks, right? Because now they're paying the property tax in that area, but they don't have the corresponding sales tax revenue. So we don't really fix anything. we'd probably end up just raising people's taxes on the property tax side, not being able to meet the demand with lower sales tax, and people would be even more upset.
Andy,
but then again, they're not. They have to decide to join that town.
They would have to.
They would have to. But the areas of influence would designate the corporate limits, basically expansion in the unincorporated areas.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask, and we have about a minute and 30 left. I'm here in this hour, and then we're going to open up the phone calls next hour.
I know, it went by fast, didn't it, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty fast.
It is 5:53, by the way, here. You're listening to KPEL. I just want to put out the simple question. I know it's not a simple answer, but we've had people call and say, okay, if we do this, and the city has its own representation, it has its own governing body, will the first conversation that has to be had be an uncomfortable one where they say we have no money to do anything now that we are not attached? Kevin, your thoughts on that?
No, as far as that goes, I think the city is not necessarily in any kind of budget problem right now. I don't think that the issue with consolidation and the city involved is as much of a budget problem as is a control of the money problem and who is actually being able to make those decisions. I think on the parish side, we entered into this in 1992 because the parish didn't have enough money to provide the services necessary, and we've, I think, frankly, not all of the administrations and councils up to this point have not been able to solve that problem. I'm of the particular opinion that what we need is a parish council who comes in twice a month. They don't think about the police. They don't think about LUS. They don't think about any of that stuff. They say, how are we going to fix this? And you know what? If they've got to figure out how to fix it without additional taxes, then that's what they've got to do, But it's not really about, are we like predetermining any sort of like solution at the end of this thing? It's how do we hold people accountable for the results? And I think that until we have a parish council that is focused 100% on the parish and not dealing with the city and the city's issues, until we've got that, we get the city of Lafayette out of that mess, right, and get everybody focused, then we're not going to come up with a solution. I don't know what the solution is, Again, we're not trying to fix the whole thing at once, We got to get the car on track. I'm running out of metaphors here.
So it's kind of like you have to pass it to see what's in it.
Okay.
No, I don't think there's any tax that anybody's going to be able to sneak past anybody in this town.
No, I'm not talking about the tax. I'm talking about how it works.
Oh, well, yeah.
You kind of have to pass it to see how it works. And that's when you look at all the dual, things like, hey, you pay for the planning commission, and when we need you, we'll rent you.
It's not working now.